To become a real-life superhero, you first have to become a leader. To become a leader, you have to learn from the best in the world. Anna Godfrey is one of the world's foremost leadership experts, and she's here to walk you along the path to becoming a leadership superhero. Welcome to the Leader More Theory.
You are listening to the Leader More Theory. To be more, you must leader more. I want to personally thank you for your support. I'm Anna Godfrey, and I'm so excited to be here with you. First of all, I want to shout out to all of those who have served in the military past and present. Without you, we would not have our freedoms and the rights that we do today. Thank you, and we will always keep you in our heart. I also want to shout out to my girls, Elena and Emma. Everything I do it for you and your future. Today we're going to be talking about villains, how to overcome them. You know, all superheroes have villains. Being forced to deal with these people can teach a leader some invaluable lessons about avoiding or dealing with conflict and managing negative people. When you recognize the less than savory characters of villains, it can help you avoid adopting these traits in yourself so that they can focus on embodying the positive ones. Can we really learn all of this from observing the negative people we may encounter? Well, since these models for villains can be either other people or those naysaying voices in our head, you better bet that we can have something useful to learn from them. Sometimes people who have the same strengths and characteristics use these traits in dramatically different ways. The difference is that superhero leaders tend to use their strengths for purpose outside themselves and their own ego or self-image, while the bad guys are focused on self-interest and getting ahead. They recognize their strengths as point of leverage to take advantage of others, rather than supporting them for the greater good. One of the strengths almost all villains have is the tendency to recognize and rub on others' weak spots in order to make them behave in a certain way. In the movies, the Joker takes innocent people hostage in order to get Batman to do what he wants. But in real life, it isn't usually this obvious. The villain is rarely obvious at all because this is how they get found out. The truth is that villains genuinely believe that they are victims, and this allows them to justify their cruel behavior towards others and gloss over it completely. Because being a victim also protects them from being outed as the manipulators and nasty control freaks that they are. They use this leverage to control those around them. Just think, the impact of the recession could have been greatly lessened if the people at those big Wall Street banks had outed the villains who were manipulating the system to their own advantage. Imagine how healthy our economy could be right now if all of those people had simply played by the rules and worked hard, using what they knew to get the job done as best as they could. They'd still be stinking rich. Real-world villains like Bernie Madoff use their intelligence for personal gain. They know how to mold the views of those around them into, say, believing that a gigantic pyramid scheme like this would never collapse. So we're going to talk about the types of villains. Now that we have a general idea of what a villain is, we can talk about several types that you may come across. The most common group of villains belong to what I call the negative committee. The negative committee is a group of cynical naysayers who like to shoot down whatever it is you're passionate about. Their misplaced negativity stems from their own lack of confidence and self-limiting belief. In their eyes, why would you succeed if they can't? These people will probably never be 100% supportive until they recognize the advantage of getting on your good side. Mostly, while thinking of all the reasons something won't work, they never even consider why something will work. Use your success as a leader as your weapon to defeat the negative committee. Their lack of belief in you has only to do with a lack of belief in themselves. So there's no reason for you to tolerate their cynicism, nor waste any time taking their own limiting beliefs to heart. People who don't believe in you are simply not worth your time. The second type of villain is the fallen hero. At one time, these people were or could have been great leaders themselves. Perhaps they even experienced some success. The problem is that they ran into obstacles along the way that caused them to fall to the dark side by becoming negative or jaded. Do you remember those learning experiences we talked about earlier? It's important to accept that sometimes you will make unhealthy choices about your business, or maybe your business has a good run, but for any myriad of reasons, it's time to move on to something else. Whatever it was that caused this hero to fall, they simply saw it as a failure, allowed it to define them, and didn't use the lessons presented in the setback that they faced to do better the next time around. Too scared of failing again to give their dreams another shot. These poor souls are stuck because they allow the past to dictate their future. As a result, they're simply too afraid to take any risk that could actually propel them forward. The fallen hero is a villain who will only come back to the good side once they get past themselves. The fallen hero teaches us that you can't be afraid to move on from a setback and try again if you want to be successful. Failure isn't as scary as some people make it out to be. Don't be afraid of trying something new because you should never be afraid of something that hasn't happened yet. You don't want to live your life wondering what if, or saying I could have done that. That could have been me. Living your life in what if land will not help you prosper. So the fallen hero will probably be yet another naysayer who tries to discourage you from your future success by referencing their past failed experiences. Perseverance, success, and becoming a professional ignorer of negativity are your weapons against the fallen hero. Our third foe on the journey to leadership success is the tragic villain. They may or may not be trying to become an entrepreneur, but they struggle regardless because they can't seem to get past their own lack of confidence. Unlike the negative committee, the tragic villain may actually attain some success, but fail to recognize or acknowledge it. They have the skills and abilities to be at the top of whatever they do, but their lack of confidence puts a glass ceiling over the things that they're working toward. These folks are their own worst critic and can't see the optimism of a possibility for themselves. Too often they focus on the negative, even when there are a million more things around them to be thankful for and proud of. They just can't see the forest for the trees, as the old saying goes. It's very easy for the negativity of the tragic villain to suck you in. Negativity will almost always cause you to lose focus. To vanquish this type of villain, you need to concentrate on the bigger picture and keep moving forward. Make it an intention to stay positive and plan your future. Focus on what is going right. This is why it is so important to surround yourself with optimistic and forward-thinking people. No one can do a villain's personal development for them. They'll accomplish their goals once they grow into the person they need to be to get there. You can always control you. In the world of the entrepreneur, these types of villains are everywhere, maybe even in your own company or team. So again, try not to be affected by the negativity of other people. All it does is slow you down. All right, lastly, we have the force of nature. These are the burning Maddoffs, the schemers. There are fewer of these types of villains, but unfortunately they do exist. And if you get in their way, they'll stop at nothing to take you down. These criminal masterminds are super competitive, like eat or be eaten competitive. But this personality often leads to their winning through unethical methods. They use unscrupulous ways to get where they want to be fast. Sometimes more deserving people get left behind because their good sense of moral keeps them moving forward at a slower pace than these folks. The force of nature seek quick and immediate status, recognition, and success. They're all about themselves and not about helping others. Their success can easily cause frustration and a sense of defeat amongst leaders who believe in sticking to the straight and narrow. The way to defeat this type of villain is to stay positive and to know if they trip you up, your success will still come, even if it's at a slower pace. You'll have an infinitely greater sense of satisfaction because you'll actually have earned everything you achieved and you helped people along the way instead of competing with them. The force of nature will never be satisfied with themselves because they're chasing all the wrong things. Leaders chase what fills their heart: creativity, challenge, and community. Status and fame is fine, but is it really filling a void in your heart? Villain or hero, we eventually get used to our place in life and always want something more. The straight and narrow might be straight and narrow, but when you're true to yourself, you feel good about what you do instead of conflicted. And unlike the force of nature, what you've built won't crumble when people find out what you did to get there. Immortality usually comes from a wounded past coupled with a sense of victimhood. Superheroes have a past too, but their past fuels them to help others on their way to success. Villains are determined, entitled, and see themselves as unstoppable. They aren't. You must and will overcome these negative forces through positivity and perseverance. Do your very best not to stray from the righteous path. Since you're in control of your entrepreneurial destiny, you don't have to fall into the traps of the villains put out there. At the end of the day, we all want success and respect. The lesson here is that taking advantage of others might work for a short period of time, but people eventually actually see past manipulation and the abuse of power or status? What path do you think is more likely to get you to your goals? Tricking other people into helping you with questionable methods that make smart and successful people shake their heads in disappointment, or supporting yourself and others with real work? Success is in your hands. Villains are like excuses. You choose to ignore them in order to ensure you succeed. Thank you for joining us here on the Leader More Theory, and I'm going to talk to you next episode.
Do you feel like a true leadership superhero now? That's great, but there's still more to do. Head over to annagodfrey.com/free book and download Superhero Leadership, the super book for the leadership mindset right now. It's absolutely free and it'll change your life. We'll see you next time on the Leader More Theory.